Hi, this is John Hand, and today on Sci-Fi Showcase, I'm going to start by asking a question. What do you get when you take the Frankenstein myth, add a touch of Terminator, and a dash of Robocop? Little stumped? You get the 1986 Canadian sci-fi action B-movie epic, Vindicator.
That's a terrible way to talk about your old colleague, Carl Lehman.
What? Carl Lehman? What are you talking about, Carl Lehman?
What we have here is a perfect opportunity.
I don't know, Alex. This isn't some animal.
Yeah, but we're ready. Let's go for it.
Yes, the Vindicator. The Vindicator, also known as Frankenstein 88, also known as Frankenstein 2000. I think that was actually the subtitle when it was released in Canada and other countries. The Vindicator, Frankenstein 2000. And it's also been called other things in other countries. Roboman, I guess as an homage to Robocop. Even though it was produced way before Robocop. 1986, directed by Jean-Claude Lord, who had just come from another Canadian film, the Canadian slasher film, Visiting Hours, with Michael Ironside as his serial killer. Crazy, crazy slasher film. The Vindicator begins with our hero, Carl, a Hawaiian-shirted hippie-type researcher who works at this mysterious facility that's run by this kind of egomaniacal whiz-kid type guy named Alex, played by Richard Cox. And, you know, he's having a bad day. Some bad things start happening with Carl. I mean, he's got a wife and a kid on the way. Turns out that Alex has different plans for Carl. Alex engineers a lab accident where Carl is actually melted. He's murdered. He's put on ice. He's put in this kind of the ragged remains of his body are preserved in this kind of white amniotic fluid type thing. It's in the film. It's coined as fake as synthetic blood, and it's Japanese, as they say. This is one of the scientists, because all of Carl's friends are kind of in cahoots with Alex on his murder, basically. And he becomes part of Alex's latest project, which is a cyborg. What's left of the husk, the burnt husk of his body, his brain, and his eyes are transplanted into this cybernetic robotic body. And this robot is kind of special in the sense that it has self-preservation circuitry on it, which for some reason there's never really explained why. It's just a great plot point. They illustrate this earlier with lab monkeys, where they implant this circuitry in them, where this self-preservation circuitry causes the robot to go crazy and violently murder anything that touches it, or really any person, because it's really not just, he can touch inanimate objects and you don't need to kill them, but people, basically any person that touches the new cybernetic Carl is dead, because he just goes on a crazed rampage. And there's supposed to be a remote control. Carl, this robot's supposed to be controlled, and in the initial birthing scene of where they're transplanting Carl's body into this robot, it's the cliche scene in Frankenstein movies where everybody is furrowed brows, all hunched around this medical table, and they're doing all this experimentation and crap, and then at the end it doesn't work, the experiment doesn't work, and everybody's just like, damn, it doesn't work, maybe next time. And then everybody invariably leaves the operating room, leaves the Frankenstein, robot to itself. And then what happens? The Frankenstein robot comes alive and then escapes without the proper circuitry being installed, this cutoff circuit for this crazy rage self-preservation thing. So Carl escapes, and he's the initial concept of this robot is that it's in this kind of gold lame suit with this visor over his head, this black visor, so you can't see his eyes or anything. It's kind of creepy. And the gold lame suit is kind of creepy as well. I think the idea of these robots is that Alex is working with NASA. There actually is the NASA logo. You see this in many points in this film. I wonder how they could really do that specifically. But I'm assuming that these robots are kind of meant for interplanetary exploration. Anyway, Carl escapes this research facility in a garbage truck, and he's dumped into the incinerator. And the gold lame suit that he's wearing is burnt out in the fire. And we see there's this incredible sequence at the beginning of the film where Carl pushes down the doors of this incinerator, and you see his smoked husk cybernetic body silhouetted in the flames, where what was once this kind of gold lame suit and is now this kind of cool, like burnt industrial robotic thing. And Carl's voice is like this. Many people find it annoying, but I just love his processed electronic voice. It's just really cool. And the visor melts off, and you're actually able to see just like a slit of his two eyes there, and that's really the only thing you see of his face. The idea is when he had this industrial accident, he was wearing goggles, and Alex says, thank God he was wearing goggles, because that's really all you can see of his face, and that's really how the actor communicates through this big, bulky suit, because it's supposed to be this big cybernetic robot that has superhuman strength, and when anything touches it, it just goes crazy, it goes rage. So the rest of the film is basically Carl's search for who killed him. He starts trudging around this town and murdering anyone that happens to cross his path. He starts off with the cliched scene of the young punks in the alleyway, and he murders them all, because they start touching him and going crazy. And the thing about this film is that it has a very grim tone. I mean, when Carl murders these people, he takes them apart. I mean, he just, rips people apart, crushes their skulls. I mean, just, really brutal, grim, downbeat, serious tone in what could have been, this rather, comic book idea of a cybernetic robot. It's very serious and downbeat. So Carl, pays a number of visits to his old research partners, his old buddies, and he pays a visit to his wife, where he begins to communicate to her through a window, and he communicates through his synthesizer and his recording equipment, that because Carl's like this amateur musician, and he starts telling her about what's going on. At the same time, Alex is bugging her house and trying to get some information about Carl, and then Alex employs a bounty hunter played by Pam Grier. It was called Hunter, who there's this big scene where Hunter is stalking Carl through the sewer system, and this big scene kind of reminiscent of something like an Alien or something, where you're really not sure, where Carl is, and there's all these goons and things, going on, and the film climaxes back at the research facility, where Alex has now basically taken all of his Carl's research partners, all the other scientists and other people, and he's put them all in robo suits as well. And so it's kind of like the end of Reanimator, where all these robots are kind of like slowly waking up, and they have the control circuitry, and Carl is, and also Alex is now in a robot suit as well himself. This has always been an odd plot point to me, because at the beginning of the film it's kind of established that Alex, it takes all of this, in-depth, extremely detailed surgery to get Carl into the suit. But now, by the end of the film, Alex is able to get all these people into the suits. I wonder who was doing the surgery to do this. But anyway, it's kind of like the end of Reanimator, where all these guys are kind of waking up, and Carl is there with his wife, who's been kidnapped by Alex, because that's how he lures him back to the research facility, and he has to save her as well as kill Alex, and Alex is now in a suit as well. And it's this big, robot duel, basically, between these two big robots who are just lumbering around. And the fight scene is kind of choreographed in this kind of very slow type lumbering thing, because the idea is that he's supposed to be these big robots who are, superhuman and powerful. And the film ends with Carl's wife and his little son looking at a display of NASA spacesuits, and they actually see Carl at their very odd scene. I'm not sure if it's meant to be that Carl's actual suit, their actual robo body, is in front of them in the display, or that's a replica of his body, but it's actually being billed in this NASA exhibit as a spacesuit. So the Vindicator, really nostalgic film for me, because I watched it as part of a syndicated television package in the United States here. It was the same package I've talked about before that had Alien and Escape from New York and Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai. I think a lot of 20th Century Fox films. And it had The Vindicator. And I guess there's nothing too special about The Vindicator. The title seems to be a kind of takeoff on the Terminator. And I guess later on, the film in other countries was retitled Roboman as kind of a takeoff on Robocop. But to me, the film, the tone of the film is really great. It has this really kind of downbeat, strange tone. Director Jean-Claude Lord, who is a Quebecois Canadian filmmaker, as I said, he'd just gotten off of visiting hours at Slasher Film with Michael Ironside. He gives this really great, strange tone to it. The film was produced by John Dunning and Andre Link, legendary Canadian producers who had started back in the 60s. And just to kind of give a little history of the Canadian film industry, it started out kind of like a lot of European film industries. The Canadian film industry started off as state-funded and just very, very high-minded and very serious, making these very, public funding and basically just a big PBS, making these very, serious films about social issues and ideals and things. And then these two producers came in, John Dunning and Andre Link, and they took state funding and other sources, and they started making like sex films. They started making like softcore movies, which, were the highest grossing films in Quebec, and it was, just like phenomenon. And they built from that, and eventually, started to produce all kinds of films. Produced David Cronenberg's first films, Shivers and Rabid. Produced many Canadian filmmakers' first, big movies. Went on in the late 70s and early 80s to produce a lot of great horror movies like Happy Birthday to Me and My Bloody Valentine. And then they did Space Hunter, which was a big 3D movie, and The Vindicator. And their company, Cinepix, eventually was one of the first companies that was kind of folded into, that was merged into Lionsgate. So that's the kind of their lineage at this point. At the heart of Lionsgate is Cinepix, really. Well, the look of Vindicator is really great. I mean, I think Andre Link and John Dunning and Jean-Claude Lord, were able to give the film a reasonable polish for its very low budget. Cinematographer René Verzier is great DP, great kind of kind of stalwart journeyman Canadian cameraman, kind of in the ranks of a Mark Irwin or something. He'd done The Little Girl Who Lives Down the Lane. He'd done that Dennis Hopper movie Out of the Blue, and he gives a really nice, polished look to the film. The music by Paul Zaza, who was a great Canadian composer who'd done a wide variety of different score. He wrote and produced all those disco themes in Prom Night. He'd worked a little bit on Black Christmas with Carl Zitter, the composer on that film. And the soundtrack in this film, another kind of unique element to it, it's kind of like a cheaper side of Brad Fiedel's Terminator 2 score. And I wouldn't say it's a ripoff in any way. I think it's just kind of keeping in that mode of mid '80s electronic score for a sci-fi movie, you know. But I don't think it's as melodic and listenable and cool as Terminator's score, but it in some ways fits the tone to the film incredibly well, and it's full of these kind of, you know, vintage synths and samples and the end fight scene, which is just drum, you know, it's primarily drum based and with this very staccato soundtrack. It really sets the tone. It's really kind of very creepy. In fact, it's really a different score than Terminator. I think it's far more creepy and less action based. It kind of, to me, brings out the drama, not in this kind of really melodic, like romantic way, but in more of this kind of downbeat, very sad way. You know, it's full of angst and revenge, you know. Well, the lead villain, Richard Cox, is just great. I mean, he comes off as this kind of like amoral, like Steve Jobs kind of guy. And Maury Chaykin is in this film, the famous Canadian actor, the late Maury Chaykin, as Bert, who's Carl's friend who promises to take care of his wife should anything happen to him. And he takes care of his wife by punching his wife's girlfriend and then trying to rape her. Just one of the classic sleazeball roles, classic Maury Chaykin kind of sleazeball role. Just really, 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 really creepy guy, you know. Terry Austin as Carl's wife is kind of suitably inert. You know, she's kind of inert as Carl. You know, Carl, the lead actor, Tom McElraith. You know, he's good in the beginning with the Hawaiian shirts and everything, and he's kind of trying to be this kind of off the wall, you know, researcher kind of guy. When he gets in the suit, he's even a little bit more expressive, you know, with his body, you know, because all he has is this kind of black suit, which is kind of black metallic suit, which is all kind of industrial and cool and silhouetted against everything, and that's really great. Pam Grier at this point, kind of in the 80s, kind of down curve before you know, being kind of rediscovered in the renaissance of Jackie Brown, but a great little performance by her. She seems kind of I don't know, it seems kind of out of place in this whole proceedings, but still a great little cool little movie. I guess it was distributed in this country by 20th Century Fox. 20th Century Fox's video arm, Key Video, distributed on VHS. And really, that's the biggest release it's had in the United States on VHS. It was released worldwide on VHS under numerous titles, as I've discussed before. It was released in Brazil under the title Roboman on DVD, and you can get that import DVD on eBay and other places relatively inexpensively. And it plays from time to time on Fox Movie Channel, late night and during various sci-fi and fantasy festivals. And that's pretty much been about it. Its life has been in syndicated television and late night cable broadcasts. But, I mean, hopefully someday somehow it will be released on a DVD or digital format in the United States so that fans like me can actually own an upgraded digital wonderful copy of this nostalgic film, because it's maybe not the best film in the world, but it's a cool movie to watch. And I guess that's the best praise I can give to it. It's a cool movie. It's something that's not fun to watch. Thank you for listening to my love letter to The Vindicator, and have a great day.